pinning hope on something deeper. Like all of us, the young spiritual leaders that I talk with are living through this very difficult moment in history, living in a culture that seems permanently inflamed, everything interpreted politically, nuance punished, algorithms rewarding outrage. Now, the folks that I talk to are not asking, but they could be forgiven if they were asking, is this even worth it? Should I just bail? I could do something else with my life. So, this series of posts about Jan Hus. Now, here's where we are in Jan's story. Last time, there he is. He's calling out church corruption. He's getting burned at the stake. He's doing the right thing, but it doesn't go well for him. Today, let's talk about how. How did he do that? And more to the point, how do we do it? How do we lead consistently? And how do we lead courageously? And how do we lead faithfully when doing so is going to go badly for us? Now, the corruption that Hus was calling out, it was super obvious. Everybody could see it. It was a system-wide scam. It was a con. It was perpetuated by the very people who were entrusted to care for their communities, and they had created and then they exploited people's worst fears. They threatened them with eternal damnation, and they sold them forgiveness for a fee. It was a scam designed to enrich church coffers, to target the poor and the desperate, and to monetize the unmonetizable, grace and forgiveness. It was an egregious debasing of the spiritual life, selling the notion that love and mercy and hope could be bought and sold. So, Hus wasn't all that brilliant seeing the problem, because everybody could see it. But nobody was doing anything about it. Now, I can kind of understand why. Selling forgiveness was a tidy income stream. It's how they built St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. It's how they funded a bureaucracy that was bigger than most nation states. It's how they paid down debt. It's how they financed lavish lifestyles for the bishops and for the cardinals. It's also how they funded charitable works, hospitals, and care for the poor and disaster relief. So, when you've got a money spigot, it's kind of hard to turn it off, even if the spigot is corrupt, even if it is toxic, which means there was a lot of pressure in the system to not do something about the problem. So yeah, it was obvious the system was corrupt as hell. So how did Hus do something when everybody around him did not? And the point of these posts is that if we dig down just a few layers, we will find hope. But not, as we saw last time, hope in a cheery outcome. Because Hus knew what was coming. It was not going to be cheery. So today, pinning our hope on something deeper than outcomes. Now, if I'm living back then, I can imagine what the not doing anything people were thinking. Come on, nothing's going to change. It's been this way for so long. If I join Hus, I'll just be pissing my life away, and for what? For nothing. That's for what? Because nothing is going to change. And the thing is, for most of Europe, they were right. Nothing did change, not for the next 100 years. And yet, as we saw in the last episode, doing what he did and doing it when he did it, Hus paved the way for one of the most seismic seasons of change in Western history. So again, our question, how? How did he do it? And more to the point, how do we do it? So, here's a story about a young leader I know. It's not a burn at the stake magnitude story, but it's the same principle. And honestly, smaller life episodes like this are most often how we live out these big principles. So this young guy has been leading a pretty traditional community for a few years now when he starts to realize that we can't change our behaviors if we don't first start to reimagine the core meaning-making story that our religion tells us, because that's where our instincts come from. If we've got a story in which God is kind of a mean-spirited hypocrite, it's not going to be long before we become mean-spirited hypocrites, and look around, that has happened. So he starts to lead his community through a time of doubting the old story and reimagining something new. Now, in the community, there are 3 donors. They're actually friends with this young guy. They get coffee together, they talk about their souls together, they work on projects together. But at some point, they start to make it clear, whoa, we are not on board with us not being an Orthodox community. We can ask questions. Actually, it's kind of cool that we ask questions, but we may not veer too far, my young friend. It was never overtly stated, but it was clear. Go down this path, you will lose 25% of the community's income. So, what's a young leader? Inspired by Jan Hus, what's a young leader to do, and why would he do it? How would he do it? Now, in the end, he did lead the church into a broader, more spacious story, and in the end, he did lose 2 of the 3 donors. The community did survive. So it wasn't a burning at the stake endeavor, but it was still costly. So again, how? How did Hus do it? How did this young leader do it? And I'm going to tell you what I think. I think they both tapped into the deeper thing kind of hope, the kind of hope not contingent on outcomes or circumstances, the kind of hope that is robust enough to carry us through our dark times. And I think they did that by, now this is going to sound trivial. I even hesitate to say it, but hang with me. I think that they did that by tapping into the source of that hope, love. Now, again, I know it. That sounds so trivial, but hang on. Because the love I'm talking about is core to human motivation. It is one of the deepest impulses within us. Anger is not that deep. Defiance is not that deep. Cleverness or even courage is not that deep. Love is that deepest of core human motivations. I'm not talking about romantic love, though that is also very motivating. I'm not talking about any kind of love that comes with a good return on investment, though again, also very motivating. No, this is love for the world as it could be, which is love for truth, love for goodness, love for beauty. And that is a core human motivation. And that is what I think both of them tapped into. Because when we act because we love truth, we just can't tolerate injustice. We just can't tolerate corruption. When we act because we love goodness, we just do stand up, even when it hurts us to do so. When we act because we love beauty, we just do tell a more spacious story, and we reject calcified, encrusted doctrines and live instead with a more life-giving, meaning-making story. And we do it even if it turns off the money spigot, and even if we do get burned at the stake. Tap into love, and we tap into moral courage. We take righteous stands, and we don't do it for reward. We live out of this deepest motivating reality within us. When we love reality as it could be, we just do refuse to be silent, and that does outlast fear, outlast defeat, even outlasts death. Love sustains faithfulness and courage. Love is the source of deep hope when hope is not winning. Which puts into context a whole collection of ancient spiritual practices, all of them there to help us develop and strengthen our access to that deep love that we carry within. Every time we meditate and quiet the noise of the ego self, and we can better hear the whispers of the divine center self, we are strengthening our attachment to that source of deep love within. Every time we immerse ourselves in nature, or we practice acts of kindness as a discipline, or acts of courage or honesty or generosity, every time we engage wisdom through literature or philosophy or the sacred texts, or we practice non-judgmental observation or authentic community, we are strengthening our attachment to the source of that deep love and strengthening our attachment to hope. Because the inner love that we all carry, it is the motivating force within us when outcomes are uncertain, when the world is loud and cruel. Every time we engage a spiritual practice, we are awakening our love for the world as it could be. This is how we live when hope is not winning. This is how we tap into the capacity Huss tapped into. The same force that champions truth and goodness and beauty even when it costs us dearly. So, let's do that. That's the work. And that's what the work does in us when we do it. So again, let's do that. All right. In the next episode, hope when those who we count on turn their backs on us. If you want to get notified when that goes live, you go ahead and subscribe.